Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to our Fire Authority meeting, and a special welcome to all our guests and visitors who are joining us this afternoon. It's great to see you all. So, I'll go through the formal script before we get on to any of the other items. I've got apologies for absence from councillors Goggin, Hume and Sarni, and also from Mark Shelford, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner, and James Mason, who's the independent person on the pensions.
Supporting the firefighters.
That's right. Yep, sorry. Okay. Item 2 is emergency evacuation procedures. I don't think we've got any fire alarm testing scheduled today.
No, Chair. Members, ladies and gents, good afternoon. There is no planned test for the fire alarm, so if it does actuate, it will be for real, so to speak. And if you can just follow the green exit signs and congregate at the front car park, the large main car park just over the road there. Thank you.
And I'm sure we all feel very safe this afternoon because we've got lots of you firefighters with us, so great. Okay, I don't have any declarations of interest notified to me.
I do. I think Councillor Nutland wanted to make a quick declaration.
Yeah, just as a resident of Yates and as a councillor in Yates, obviously item B on item 8, I'll declare some sort of interest on there, okay?
Thank you.
Right, and we haven't had any written public access.
No public access statements.
Thank you. Okay, just to confirm, this Fire Authority meeting is taking place at headquarters in Portishead, and we're also recording the meeting for the public to view on the Fire Authority YouTube channel. And I'd like to ask members to introduce themselves. I'll start with myself. My name's Brenda Massey. I'm Chair of the Fire Authority. Just trying to work out which way round's best to go. I think we'll go this way for a change. So,
good afternoon. I'm Robert Payne, Councillor for Weston-super-Mare Central on North Somerset Council.
I'm Dan Thomas, Councillor for Congsby and Puxton, also on North Somerset Council.
David Wilcox, Councillor for Lockleys in the fine city and county of Bristol.
Steve Smith, Councillor for Westbury-on-Trim and Henleys on Bristol City Council.
Jane Stansfield, Councillor for Thornbury, South Gloucestershire Council.
Councillor Richard Eddy, Bishops of Bristol.
Councillor Yasin Mahmood, Lawrence Hill Ward, Bristol City Council.
I'm Councillor Ron Hardy, Councillor for Emerson's Green in South Gloucester.
Councillor Richard Tucker, North Somerset Council, Weston-super-Mare, Milton Ward.
Councillor Andrew Varney, Brislington West, Bristol City Council.
Ben Nutland, Councillor for Yates North, South Gloucestershire Council.
Councillor Karen Walker, Councillor for Peasdown St John, and I sit on the Bath and North East Somerset Council.
Good afternoon, Matthew Riddle, member for Seven Vale Ward in South Gloucestershire.
Good afternoon, I'm Paul May, I'm the Councillor in Baines for Whitchurch and Pensford.
Hello, I'm Councillor Liz Brennan for Frenchay and Downend, South Gloucestershire Council.
thank you. I think that's all the councillors. So can I move on to ask officers to introduce themselves, and I'll go round the opposite way this time.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, ladies and gentlemen. Simon Shilton, your Chief Officer and Chief Exec.
Good afternoon, I'm Angie Feeney, your Director of Corporate Services here at Avon Fire and Rescue Service.
Good afternoon, Steve Imrie, one of the Assistant Chiefs for Avon Fire.
Good afternoon, Luke Gazzard, Area Manager, Head of Efficiency Savings.
Good afternoon, Emma Bowen, Democratic Services.
Good afternoon, Claire Bentley, Head of Finance here at Avon Fire.
Good afternoon, Richard Welch, Assistant Chief Fire Officer at Avon Fire.
Good afternoon, I'm Verity Lee, Statutory Finance Officer.
Good afternoon, Amanda Brown, the Clerk to Avon Fire Authority.
Right, thank you for that. And can I just remind everybody to put your phones on silent or vibrate or something? Thank you. Right, and can I also remind anybody who's speaking to use your microphones and remember to turn them off when you finish speaking, because it does interfere with the recording. If there's any voting required, it will take place by asking members for a show of hands in the order of any votes against, any abstentions, and any votes for. And I think there's a...
So I'm just advising everyone that there is a police exercise taking place today, and I believe it's a firing exercise. So if you hear any noises of firing, don't be too alarmed, and hopefully it won't interrupt proceedings too much.
Thank you. And you've got...
And another announcement just to elected members. I sent you an email, or Emma sent you an email on the 17th of August. I've invited you all, if at all possible, to complete the Equality and Dignity in the Workplace e-learning package. This is voluntary training, so entirely up to you, but if you can complete it, we'd be grateful. And please could you let Emma know and provide us with any feedback you have. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would urge you, if possible, to do that training. It's very helpful. I think it's over to you, Simon, for the next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to make a statement to members in relation to recent ITV coverage that the service was subject to. And on the 11th of September, ITV hosted a segment on their regular news programme, which investigated claims of bullying and harassment in Avon Fire and Rescue Service. The programme included testimonies from former Assistant Chief Officer Rob Davis, anonymously a former member of staff and a current member of staff, who also shared their concerns about a culture of bullying and harassment within the service. The comment was provided by myself on request of ITV. The response was clear that there was no place for discrimination, bullying, harassment within the service, and that most staff are excellent ambassadors for the service and treat each other and the public with kindness, dignity and respect. To support this position, over the past few months, the service introduced a zero-tolerance statement, launched a new Dignity and Respect toolkit, and communicated a whole host of support services to our workforce, all of which have been regularly communicated to staff by the internet and our internal mechanism to shout, on posters displayed at stations and various workplaces across the service, and also by my own video blog and through Microsoft Teams using SharePoint publication facilities. More recently, the service established a new independent, external and confidential reporting line called Speak Up, to provide staff a safe space for them to raise concerns if they consider something is not right within the workplace and don't feel that they can raise this through other available channels. This system, which is hosted by an external body, Crime Stoppers, to ensure confidentiality, has to date received 7 reports. Of those 7 reports, 2 have been sufficiently serious enough for us to take immediate action. 1 has insufficient information, and the remaining 4 have been passed to deal with by local line management. And that's all. Thanks, Chair. I'll change some more better news, members. That we had a team of cyclists, a team of 10 firefighters from the service recently cycled over 400 kilometres in just 3 days from Bath Fire Station to Paris, and in doing so have to date raised over £5,500 for cancer research, which is a huge well done to the team and an incredible achievement in relation to them doing that between their duty days and cycling all that distance and actually managing to return back for their duty days as well. So I'm sure you'll join me in passing on a huge congratulations to that team. We've also had, since the last meeting, a number of staff and teams that attended a UKRO Festival of Rescue. And on the weekend of the 15th of September, some of our rope rescue, our water rescue and extrication teams took part in UKRO Festival of Rescue competition in Lincoln. Our teams displayed their outstanding skills and were successful in their efforts and winning awards in the following categories. So again, something to celebrate, members. First place in the Heavy Rescue Challenge, Avon worked alongside Tyne and Wear, demonstrating exceptional skills and teamwork. and these are representatives and services from right across the country, and Avon received, were awarded a first place. Congratulations also goes to Kirsty Nelms, who was awarded second place for the Best Water Rescue Medic, showcasing her commitment to life-saving techniques. And also to Lee Rogers, who was awarded second place in the overall Incident Commander category, highlighting his expertise in vehicle extrication. And all of the techniques that are shared and the best practice learning comes back into the service to enhance our own service and ability and skills to obviously make our communities safer. So once again, huge congratulations to those teams and colleagues from across the service.
Perhaps you could pass on our congratulations, Simon, to them.
Thank you, Chair.
Very well done. Great. Okay, moving on to item 6, minutes of the ordinary meeting of Avon Fire Authority held on the 21st of June this year. And I would like to move those as a correct record. And can I see somebody to second it? Thank you. Everybody agreed? Yeah, thank you. I'll sign those later. Right, item 7.1. This is where we look at minutes of the various committee meetings. And I'm going to ask members to note the committee meeting minutes in bulk, as they've already been approved by their relevant committees. If you have any discrepancies in those minutes, could you please raise them now, as we're not going to go through each set individually? No? Great. Okay. So, moving on, if you wish to discuss the confidential minutes further, please let me know. We won't be going through them now. Okay, on to item 8, which is the budget shortfall options. And I think this is over to you, Simon, and to Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, in front of you is a paper which sets out a number of options for you to, and recommendations for you to consider in the meeting today. Members will recall that back in February of this year, the Head of Finance and the Treasurer to the authority presented the medium-term financial plan for the following 4 years. Within that plan, it identified a balanced budget for this current financial year 2022 to 2023, but then the subsequent 3 years, a deficit within our financial planning in relation to £1 million in 24-25, and then subsequent deficits thereon after, which the paper will explain to you. As part of that presentation for that medium-term financial plan, I did commit to members to come back to members with a number of proposals and recommendations to enable that budget deficit to be met. I've appointed Area Manager Luke Gazard to start undertaking some research and some work in this area. I'd like to pass over to Luke for presentation of paper. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Chief. Can I ask members to turn to page 53 of their packs for this paper? I'm just going to start with the summary as detailed in section 1. So as the Chief just said, in May 23, the Chief Officer commissioned a project to identify efficiencies addressing the savings required to meet the funding pressures in the medium-term financial plan. This is to maintain a balanced budget, which is a statutory duty. Funding pressures became known following the confirmation of the Grey Book Pay Award and uncertain future funding settlements from the financial year 2024 to 2025 onwards. The project objective was to maintain or improve service delivery by not closing stations or losing any fire appliances. This will ensure an improved service to our communities while continuing to invest in making our service stronger and keeping our communities safer. The proposals included within this paper set out to ensure we maintain the requirements in our community risk management plan and our aims to make our service stronger and our communities safer. The efficiency project has identified a potential £2 million worth of recurrent annual efficiency savings within the service by the financial year 2026 to 2027. Key areas of focus have been on crew and models on whole-time stations, the introduction of a blended fleet and reinvestment for an alarms response vehicle. The project team has identified that efficiencies can be achieved through natural retirement profiles and not redundancies, but not all efficiencies will be realised in year 1 due to the current retirement profile of the service. However, over years 2 and 3, all potential efficiencies are projected to be achieved. You will note the recommendations at the bottom of page 53 and on the top of page 54, and we'll come back to those towards the end of this paper. So on page 54, paragraph 3.1, we have the background to this project. So the service has a single year-on-year budget settlement, and we have applied a number of historical assumptions from previous budget settlements and budget forecasting. Members will recall the 4-year medium-term financial plan was presented for approval by the authority on 17th of February this year. The plan covered the 4-year period from 2023 to 26-27 and highlighted the following incremental shortfalls in our revenue budget. Financial year 2024 to 25, £1 million shortfall. 2025 to 26, £400,000 shortfall, additional to that first year. And financial year 2026 to 27, £500,000 additional shortfall. So in addition to the shortfalls I just mentioned and identified, the service is looking to generate a further £600,000 in savings across the 3-year period to allow for a contribution to revenue budget to be earmarked for capital reserves to fund fleet and building rebuilds and improvements. The extra £600,000 is required due to the increase in construction materials and recent inflation increases. Therefore, that brings the total amount of efficiency required to 2.5 million. So within paragraph 3.6 of your pack and my paper, you will note how we researched this piece of work. Through data analysis and research, we explored other crewing models across the country that have not had a detrimental effect on response standards. And through this project, we have identified at least 7 other services that ride 4 and 4 on their appliances at this moment in time. So in doing this, it allowed us, the team, to match our recommendations with local risk using our services CAD Corp risk analysis software. And this ensures we maximise operational efficiency while maintaining the highest level of service and safety for our communities and our staff. To achieve the forecast efficiencies, several options have been considered as per the recommendations. And you'll note in paragraph 4.1 that there are preferred options. These are a crewing model of 4 and 4 on all stations, except Hicksgate. Adoption of a flexible rostering system at Yates Fire Station for whole-time personnel only. And adopt a smaller response vehicle, otherwise known as blended fleet, at a multi-pump station. This will also align with our environmental ambitions for a net zero fleet. So by exploring and implementing all the options and recommendations, it is anticipated the service can reduce its whole-time operational establishment by 40 posts, realising an annualised saving of £2 million. Full financial details are set out in section 4, and we can answer any questions about that if needed. Crucial to the recommendations is that we match our resource to risk and identify options that would maintain or improve our service delivery and ensure the same or improved service to the communities with reinvestment and innovation. The key considerations are detailed in section paragraph 5.2 onwards, and I'll just go into a bit more detail about the recommended options. So in paragraph 5.2 is a crewing model of 4 and 4 on every whole-time appliance. Our current crewing model is 4 on every water tender and 5 on every water tender ladder. Moving to a model of 4 on both appliances will ensure the service meets and maintains its current response standards as detailed in our service plan. All on-call appliances will still be utilised with a maximum of 5 riders on the appliance. And if this crewing model was adopted, it would mean a reduction in 28 posts and would create efficiencies of £1.4 million. The next option is a flexible crewing system at Yates Fire Station for whole-time personnel. So this option allows for whole-time crews at Yates to use a self-rostering system, always ensuring a crewing model of 4. This would allow for the day crews at Yates to self-roster for their shifts. And the reason we've highlighted this at Yates Fire Station is because it is a day crewed fire station, which means they do 4 consecutive days of 12-hour shifts. And that model fits best with our research from different services around the country. So if this model was adopted, it would mean one team, as in one shift, and crews would self-roster to suit their own personal needs, as long as we've got and maintain a crew of 4 on that station at all times. It would create efficiencies of 4 posts and save us £206,000 in efficiencies. The third one is a smaller vehicle with blended fleet, as detailed in paragraph 5.4. So this would work at a multi-pump station within the Bristol area. And the blended fleet vehicle would be a smaller MIDI-type fire appliance that allows the crew of a multi-pump station to dynamically mobilise depending on the type of incident they are required to attend. The blended fleet vehicle would be mobilised as a single vehicle to non-life critical lower category incidents and would create capacity for operational crews to complete more prevention activity. Being a blended fleet in a smaller type vehicle, that works well with matching our resource to risk in terms of some of our narrow streets that we have in the Totterdown and Clifton and central areas of Bristol. It will mean a smaller chassis size, so it will have slightly less equipment and slightly less water on, but we will work with internal and external agencies to design that vehicle with our staffing groups. If this option was adopted, it would mean a reduction in 8 posts and would create efficiencies of £412,000. Key to this proposal is reinvestment back into the service, and that is detailed in paragraph 5.8. So if all savings are realised, there is an opportunity to use any surplus savings to enhance making our community safer and our service stronger. In using a crew model of 4 on every appliance and a blended fleet vehicle, it would also allow for reinvestment. Our risk mapping identifies an alarm response vehicle that responds to automated fire alarms to businesses, could be located in the Bristol area and operated during normal business hours. Over the last 12 months, we have 37% of our calls are to automated fire alarms. This would be crewed by either a business fire safety qualified member of staff or an operational member of staff. Capacity on whole-time stations and shifts would be enhanced because they will not be attending the majority of these calls, and it would mean a standard appliance obviously does not attend the calls during business hours, and it would mean the crews have more capacity to be productive in prevention and protection activities. This also aligns with the NSE productivity and capacity work stream and also the HMIC FRS diagnostics tool. Should the Fire Authority approve the options, the next steps will be to continue with engagement with the rep body. We've already started that piece of work, and our wider workforce to ensure they're involved in the trials and feedback on any proposals. Given that the options will not see a change in the response model, there is no need to engage in the wider community. I will now pass over to the clerk to go through the recommendations.
So the recommendations are slightly amended in relation to A, so I'll just read them out for members to note. So A is approve the continued development and implementation of a crewing model that reflects 4 personnel on every pumping appliance at whole-time stations. Crewing will be maintained on 5 at Hicksgate, where we have key point indicators for national resilience. But this is subject to any unforeseen risk to service delivery to the public, with progress on development and implementation to be reported back to the next Policy and Resources Committee in December. Furthermore, then there's recommendations B, C and D, which are as stated in the paper. So B is approve the ongoing research and development of a flexible crewing model for Yate whole-time personnel, whilst ensuring 4 personnel on the whole-time appliance to maintain a day crewed model. C is approve the reinvestment and introduction of an alarm response vehicle, blended fleet, to create capacity for whole-time crews to be more productive in protection and prevention activities. And D, approve the research and potential implementation of a smaller response vehicle for lower category non-life critical incidents. This is a blended fleet option for a multi-pump station to be defined by risk analysis and data. And then we've added an E as well to the recommendations. This matter to be returned, reported back to the Policy and Resources Committee in December on progress in relation to the implementation of these recommendations. And that progress report will include any unforeseen risks that we've envisaged so that they can be addressed before a final implementation goes ahead. So an additional E and additional wording to A. So I can go through that again at the end. What I propose we do next, I know the FBU want to make a statement, so if I invite the FBU Rep Amanda Mills to make that statement, and then we can open the floor for questions.
Afternoon. You've got a microphone? No, I'm just told to speak loudly. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Fire Authority. My name is Amanda Mills. I'm the elected representative for the firefighters behind me and the firefighters of Avon. I'm here today to make a collective representation against the cuts to frontline firefighter posts being proposed. The reduction of 40 firefighters amounts to just over 10% of whole-time frontline staff. Should your constituents that we serve across Bristol, Bath, North East Somerset, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire accept these dangerous cuts? Currently in Avon Fire and Rescue Service, standard crewing on pump ladders is set to 5 personnel. This enables us to resolve the majority of one-pump incidents safely and effectively in our communities and the public we serve. It is a sombre fact that even with the crew levels of 5, on a daily basis we struggle to achieve this. We must ride with crews of 4 all too often already. The effects of this are far-reaching. In a house fire, a 5th person is a crucial safety measure who monitors our air supply and sends vital messages back to our incident commanders. At the scene of a road traffic collision, all 5 of the crew play a vital role in our procedures. Procedures put in place to ensure effective release of a casualty, paramount when an ambulance is not yet on scene. Not to mention the psychological demand on incident commanders who are eager for resources to carry out life-saving intervention and to resolve to prevent escalation of an incident. In our CRMP, developed, approved and promoted by Avon Rescue Service, environmental considerations were documented, highlighting the increase in wildfires and flooding. Combined with the year-on-year population increases of all 4 of our counties, can we really be expected to do more with less? It is noted that advances in technology have assisted the Fire and Rescue Service within my generation, but ultimately, when a member of the public dials 999 and requests a fire engine, there is an expectation that we will arrive with sufficient crew to be able to resolve the incident. Firefighters join to help people in their hour of need, not be bystanders waiting for additional resources to arrive so that we can carry out our duties in a safe manner. Just last month, Scottish firefighters were forced to stand and watch a historic hotel burn to the ground due to a lack of available resources brought about by deadly cuts within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. The FBU Safe Systems of Work and critical attendance standards call for 9 firefighters at the scene of a house fire. If this 4 and 4 crew model is agreed, a 3rd additional appliance will have to be mobilised, leaving towns and villages with no timely fire cover. Should a fire occur in these villages that are uncovered, resources will have to attend from considerably further afield. When waiting times for a fire engine increase, so do the ferocity and size of a fire, giving less chance of survival should anyone need rescuing and putting firefighters in a position of greater risk. These cuts, if endorsed, will endanger both the residents and visitors throughout Avon and place preventable, unreasonable demands on our members. A modern fire and rescue service which claims to match resource to risk needs appropriate funding. We will not stay silent while Avon Fire and Rescue Service make do with inadequate funding. These proposals represent casualisation, not modernisation. The FBU is committed to fighting for better funding for the UK Fire Service. Now is the time for urgent investment. The FEU will campaign against any threat to public and firefighter safety every step of the way. All we ask is that you stand with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. It's been very helpful to listen to. And can I now invite any members who have questions? Please raise your hand if you do. Sorry, Steve.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Luke, for the report. I've just got a few to start with, just a few sort of quick fire ones, just to check my understanding of what the proposals are. So, first one, 5.2, the 4+4 crewing. The total reduction in post there is 28. Am I right in thinking that that's 7 appliances across 4 watches, a reduction of 1 person on each appliance, 7 times 4 being 28?
It's 1 person per watch.
1 person per watch, and is that 7 appliances that we're talking about in total to get you to 28?
It's 8, but we've got different options. So at a multi-pump station in Bristol, there will be a blended dynamic model. So it's 7, but 8.
Okay.
I'm not sure that makes sense, does it? So we've worked the figures on 7 4s. Yeah, 7 lots of 4.
Okay, so there'll be 7 groups of 5 that will become 4.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next one is 5.3 is the Yate. I understand the flexible rostering and the self-rostering idea. What I'm not clear on is how that then saves 4 posts. Are we saying there are currently 5 people on every shift at Yate and there will in future be 4? Or does it save posts somehow by being a more economic way of doing it?
Yate has a day crewing contingent and also an on-call contingent, but this is just in relation to the day crewing members of staff. They currently have 2 watches, so they do 4 days on, 4 days off, and then the other watch comes onto duty. So it's 2 watches of 7, and they ride 5 on the appliance at this moment in time when we're at optimum crewing. So we're proposing to go down to 4 and blending the 2 watches into 1 big team so they can self-roster, and through self-rostering they will plan 3 months ahead, be dealt with locally by the watch management team, and they will then be able to choose the shifts they work, and through adopting that model of merging teams together, it creates 4 posts of efficiencies.
Okay, so the saving comes from the fact that currently there are 5 during the day on the station.
Yeah.
And under this proposal there would be 4.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. And the final one on the blended crewing, or the blended vehicle, blended fleet, is a saving of 8 posts. Again, I'm assuming that's 2 per watch across 4 watches.
Yes.
So does that mean that on a station that currently has 2 full-size, or more, 2 full-size fire appliances, one with 4 on and one with 5 on, in the future there'd be 1 full-size with 4 on and 1 smaller vehicle with either 2 or 3 people on it?
This is a dynamic mobilisation model that is used in other parts of the country, and it's a concept of where you have a standard crewing of 7 on a station, so you have a standard fire appliance and a smaller vehicle.
Sorry, I'm just going to try and swap your mic so that there's not so much feedback. Okay.
Yeah, fine, yeah. Can everybody hear okay still?
Yeah.
So a crewing of 7, so you have a standard fire appliance and a midi smaller type fire appliance. So dynamic mobilisation is around putting the onus back into our control teams and moving away from such a structured mobilisation policy. They would also contact the station depending on the type of call. So if there's a non-life risk critical call, perhaps somebody collapsed behind a closed door or a rubbish bin on open ground, they will mobilise with 2 or 3 people on that appliance and ride with 4 on the pump. If they wanted to ride with only 2 on the smaller engine, they would keep 5 on the bigger engine. So it's a flexible model, and we put the onus back on the crews and control to dynamically mobilise, giving them ownership of how they do it.
Sure, okay, so the total, it goes from that station, whichever station it might be, that would currently have a 5 and a 4, total of 9 people on it, under this proposal would have 7 people on it, split between however it might be, and that's where the saving is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have other questions, but I'll let someone else have a go and come back.
Right, Richard?
Thank you very much, Chair. It was in reference to the table under 4.4. We're projecting 40 retirements over the next 3 years to obviously feed into that budget shortfall. So the first is, what if obviously some of those don't take place, that'll obviously lead to knock-on cuts that we'll have to find elsewhere. And secondly, the loss of the experienced frontline firefighters, which was obviously well documented by the FBU statement. They obviously won't be replaced, and there are obviously concerns in terms of our frontline response and public safety. Just wonder how we address those.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We would have to balance the recruitment, so it takes around 2 years to train a fully competent firefighter. So we'd have to balance the replacement of staff as and when vacancies come in. Currently, we do have around, on average, about 2 retirements per month. If we don't meet the prediction, so we have less than that as an example, then there is some element of flexibility within the budget in terms of a working reserve that we're able to manage that over a short period of time, not a long period of time. But history would suggest that we normally maintain around about 2 leavers per month, retirements from that perspective. In relation to the skills, that's no different when we have normal retirements now, is obviously we have new recruits coming in, and we'd have to balance that accordingly so we can upskill the workforce over that period of time.
Any other questions, comments?
One of my questions was asked by Richard, so thanks for that response. Can I thank Luke for his report? I've got just 2 questions. Firstly, my understanding is various other national fire authorities are experimented or implemented this twin model. Of course, what's their assessment and their experience? And does His Majesty's Inspectorate have a view of this?
Yeah, I'll start from the response from other fire and rescue services. So during the course of the project, we contacted many of the UK fire and rescue services to look at and evaluate their crew models, and at least 7 are carrying out the 4-and-4 crew model. As you could imagine, probably the first service to implement that, going back a number of years ago now, there was a few bumps in the road, but as more and more services have taken on, there's been much more wider engagement with the rep body, much more consultative piece of work and joined up piece of work to demonstrate that is a working and effective model.
In relation to your second point, Councillor, in relation to His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service, they wouldn't form a view in relation to any particular staffing models. They more look at how well we utilise our resources from a productivity perspective, and also efficient and effective use of public funds to deliver that service.
And we've heard from the public forum how this model is actually increasingly used here already informally, and my understanding was it was a practice during the COVID pandemic. Do senior managers have any observations about the union's concerns about safety?
Of course, part of the paper would suggest, just indicate around looking at the mobilising system. These proposals, we would not compromise firefighter safety. Amanda said earlier on that we do have occasions where we are riding force on our appliance, and through the dynamic mobilising and the ability for incident commanders to request more resources, that enables us to maintain that safe level of system of work.
I haven't even got my microphone on, I apologise. I've got Andrew.
Where's Andrew?
Down there.
Where's Andrew?
That Andrew. And I've then got Robert and David.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's anybody. Yeah.
It looks like Ben, and we've got Paul
Right.
May as well. So,
That's fine.
Okay, and Steve.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Which one do you want to go with first?
Let's start on that side and we'll move
Okay.
over.
Robert, do you want to kick us off?
The implication of the report is that if we don't go ahead with these changes, that we would have to end up with closing fire stations and reducing appliances. Can you give me any idea about which stations are most likely to be affected and what the effect on our communities would be from that?
So in relation to station closures, Councillor, is that what you're referring to, or appliance removals?
Well, both really.
So that's very much determined by what we would call our community risk management plan. So we'd run that data. We do have a degradation plan which gives us an indication where that reduction could take place, if you like, but also we have to measure that against our commitment against our attendance standards and the impact on our attendance standards. So that would be where the what we call a CAD Corp system, which is referenced within the paper itself, would make that determination based on a risk-based a model from there. So I can't really identify exact states at the moment because we'd run that through and look at the various permutations of if you were to close a station or take an appliance away, the impact that has not just on the local area but across the service. Hence why the proposals here in front of you do not propose the closure of any fire station or the reduction of any fire appliances, and in essence actually an enhancement if the automatic fire alarm vehicle was to be adopted. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Okay. Right. I'm going to go to Andrew next because he had his hand up first.
Thank you, Chair. Very fair. Thank you very much, Luke, for the report. Just referring to section 6.4 about the early collaboration and consultation with representative bodies. Just wondering how those discussions are going, because obviously we've had a statement here today from the FBU and they're describing these proposals as dangerous cuts. And I'm just very concerned that we could have a bit of a breakdown in relationships if we pursue this path. I'm just wondering how the conversations are going and sort of what sort of compromise there can possibly be.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. I think we've engaged with the rep body at the earliest opportunity. I feel we have a really good open relationship. We have some very, very good constructive discussions. I think there's an acknowledgement of the situation we're in with regard to the pay rise, and we need to find a balanced budget. And we're completely committed to working, not with only the FBU, but all our staff on wider engagement going forward.
Could I just ask another question as well? So it's just in relation to the smaller response vehicle that's being proposed. I think you mentioned some of its capabilities earlier, and that's really kind of interesting. I'm in Bristol, in my area, there are quite a lot of narrow streets, and I know that sometimes there are access issues with the larger appliances, so I think this is like a really good kind of step forward in terms of risk assessments and access issues, and providing for everyone in every part of the community. So I'm really pleased to see this as one of the proposals. And just to check, it will have full firefighting capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Given the size of the vehicle, will be smaller than a standard 15-ton frontline appliance. It will have a lower gross weight that we can put equipment and water onto it. But it will have water, it will have a firefighting capability, and we will work, depending on the location of that vehicle, we will work with the local risk to see what other local risk equipment we need to put on that vehicle.
I think probably Temple might be a good location for it. The fact that I'm station champion is kind of immaterial there, but it's a good central location for the narrow streets of Bristol.
I think we need to go by our risk profile, Councillor.
Thank you. David, I've got next.
Thank you, Chair. Going on more further detail about the small blended vehicle, on paragraph 5.4, you describe quite a lot of the characteristics of the vehicle, but you don't describe how much crew it's going to have. So I'm wondering how you actually achieve those 8 post savings, and will the vehicle be electric, please?
The vehicle, in terms of environmental impact, the vehicle will work towards our environmental ambitions of being net zero. So that will either be electric or dual fueled, but we will work towards a greener vehicle. and the answer I gave your colleague to your left earlier around the blended crewing and the dynamic crewing of that. So it will be a dynamic crew of 7 people, and they will have the option of riding 5 or 4 on the main firefighting appliance and 2 or 3 on the smaller vehicle.
And what would the timescale be for delivery of this vehicle?
We will work with stakeholders because we would have to look at the design of a vehicle. There are various prototypes around the country that are currently being used. One service had a new product delivered only last week, so we would look at what is going on around the country. Then we've got strict procurement guidelines we need to follow, so I wouldn't be able to currently put a time limit on it, but it needs to be delivered in the term of this medium-term financial plan.
The aim, in order to find efficiency savings that we need to balance the budget, it would be looking to introduce that within a 3-year period over the medium-term financial plan, Councillor.
Ben, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, but a comment. It's the same comment I'm going to make that I did earlier this year. When we talk about efficiencies, we're talking about cuts. And actually, you can only make so many efficiencies before things really start to hurt. And I know the work that Simon and the senior leadership team have done on this in terms of actually going from not through plan B, but plan C, D, and as we go. And actually what I'd hope that what this authority can do in its various committees is actually send a message to government saying that you can only delay proper funding, so much. The 1-year settlements don't work because they not only prevent you from looking actually down the longer term future, but actually hinder investment and actually hinder investment in our staff. And at the end of the day, I'd like to thank the FBU for being here today, because at the end of the day, guys, you're the ones that go out and do the work. I said earlier to Simon, we have so much negativity that comes out about the fire authority, certainly lately, but actually, in terms of we are an incredible organisation full of incredible people that do incredible things day after day, and quite often you don't get the thanks for it. So at the end of the day, reluctantly, we're going to have to do this because by law we have to have a balanced budget, and I'm going to hate myself for doing this, but that's going to be the case. But one thing that I hope that we can do as an authority is actually send a message to government and say, actually, going forward, we need more than a 1-year settlement. We need actually proper funding, because if we don't, we're going to be in a very worse position than we currently are.
Thank you, Ben, and I think we would all agree with that. If we were properly funded and had a proper view of how much we would get year on year, we wouldn't be in this position. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's not going to change. We can only hope for the future, I think, is what we need to say. Okay, Paul is my next speaker.
Thank you, Chair. As a councillor, I'm on the Fire Authority. I still represent my community, and I think it's really important that I've picked up the message. We're not going to be cutting fire stations, we're not going to be cutting fire engines, and we have made the pay award to our staff who are valued. And I think that's a really positive message that I've picked up from the paper. What I would raise a query, though, because I am just a councillor and you're the professional as the Chief Fire Officer, is around the safety and effectiveness of the fire service moving forward. So I think it's important that we actually do ask you that question. And I'm delighted that we've added the little e to bring this back to the Policy Committee, because I think the Policy Committee is in public. So we can do that. But I do think within the risk section, we should have put in the reference to the risks to the community if this service doesn't perform the way that you would want. So perhaps we can pick that up at the Policy Committee moving forward when we go through the implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I give you my commitment that we'll work with the trade unions, with Amanda and Matt as well as the representatives to ensure that we have effective policies and procedures to make sure our firefighters are safe. And also this is around matching resources to risk as well, and making sure that we match the appropriate resource to the risk as and when it becomes known.
Thank
you. Steve?
Thanks. Yeah, I've got a list here. I was going to choose the most important ones. First one, I guess, is about assurance. So the key to this is that what we're hearing in the report is doing this doesn't affect the service's ability to respond. That's something, clearly, if this goes ahead, that we will need to monitor and assure ourselves of. That's our job as a fire authority. It's a job, I guess, for AJOC, and Ben chairs that committee. What are the key metrics that AJOC can be looking at to assure itself and to assure us that that ability to respond isn't being degraded?
The key metrics that come back to the fire authorities are performance standards. So that is life risk incidents, first appliance within 8 minutes. That's the measure in which you've agreed as an authority. It's in our service plan and our commitment around those category of incidents, and that will be the measure around how we're performing against that.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's one that will be important if this does happen, that we're monitoring that and we're seeing.
We have a regular performance report to AJOC, so it will be part of that, because you have your traffic light system on that as well.
So that's our sort of canary to see if something isn't working as it should. Okay, good. And my other question is following up on what a few people have said. If the funding for next year is what we're forecasting, which is fairly prudent, I think it's a sensible thing to do, we're going to have to do something. And this is, I think, the least worst thing that we could do. But we all want and we all hope that actually the funding will increase appropriately. If we get 5 months down the line to budget time and we find that actually we are getting more than I think it's 1.5% that we've forecast, should we delay this, reverse it, or is the decision at that point to make, do we want to take these savings anyway and put it into capital to delay the point in the future when we have to borrow?
I think it'd always be prudent to review what our financial position is when it becomes known. And so that we can work with the authority and with the trade unions around what other options that may well be available, because there's also investment in the service that is required in a number of areas as well.
Sure. So I guess my question is that if we vote for this today, as reluctantly the least worst option, I think, as Ben said, and then we find out in February that actually the position isn't as bad as we thought, and the budget is looking better, would we be in a position then to reverse that decision, or delay it for another year if it's a one-year funding deal, if that's what we choose to do, or would it be too late by then?
That'll be authority's decision. This is your remit. Obviously, we will. Part of the recommendations is we will report back to the Policy and Resources Committee in December on progress for implementation. We will get a pretty much indication of what our budget might look like at that time.
You first and then
Thank you. Just leading on about risk and safety, we sort of mentioned risk to the communities, but when we feed back, will risk to our firefighters also be included in that reporting as well, if there's been any incidents? I think it's really important to hear about that.
We can include that in the obviously in the recommendation in relation to how to report back to the Policy and Resources Committee as well. And I've said, give my commitment to work with Amanda and Matt to ensure that the decisions that we take and how we implement, the proposed changes, we work with them to make sure that firefighter safety is at the forefront of our considerations.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think that most of us around the table have in the past been involved in making very difficult decisions, and this is yet another very difficult decision that we need to make today. I'm grateful for the officer's report. I think it's a very good report. I'm pleased that they've looked at other options, and you've been very clear and transparent why you've discounted those other options. But obviously it is a very difficult decision. Representing the villages around Thornbury, I'd be interested to know if any of these proposals would affect a station where they've got retained fire people. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Proposals detailed within this report only affect our whole-time workforce. So, as an example, Thornbury, which is an on-call station, they would still mobilise with 5 people on that fire appliance. And they have 2 there, so there would be no impact to on-call communities in terms of response and the number of people responding.
Would they, for example, be getting one of these smaller vehicles if there's two there, if you see what I mean?
Not within the detail of this proposal. That would be future work if we decided to go that way, but it would be very much on a matching of resource to risk basis.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
I'd like to thank members of the FBU for being here today and Amanda for her statement. I have concerns that we're asking firefighters to do more with less. Can we clarify how four firefighters will be doing the work of 5 going forward? For example, who will monitor oxygen levels?
Sorry, so can you just repeat that last part? I missed it, sorry.
For example, sorry, just the last line?
Yes.
I asked, for example, who would be monitoring oxygen levels as the example given in the FBU statement.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got various different safe systems of work in practice, and we're working with the FBU later this month in running some trials like other services have done when they've implemented this model. Depending on the scenario and the type of fire, we have different policies and procedures, so we can rapidly deploy firefighters into a building under control measures, but not with a full entry control board. So what we will do is work with them to maintain and ensure our firefighters are working safely at all times.
Thank you.
One more, last one, I promise. I think we've all visited stations where we've heard, well, you know, there should be 9 of us on tonight, but actually there's only 8 or there's only 7 because people are ill or training or whatever it might be. If we reduce the planned staffing from 9 to 8 or indeed to 7 on the blended station, is there a risk that through that normal level of absence we end up without sufficient people on the station to be able, and it ends up taking appliances off the run by default because there aren't enough people there?
Yeah, so within the service we've got something what's called a ridership factor or a crewing factor. So that currently sits at 1.37 for Avon and this authority. So as it stands today, on a single pump station, we need 5 on duty today. We times that by 1.37 and that gives us 6.98. So we need 7 people to maintain crewing at that station, given some may be on sick, some may be on a course or other types of leave. So going down to 4, that will mean a reduction of 1 person, so they'll still be on 6. There could be a time where we did look at going to reducing the whole services establishment ridership factor down to 1.2. That means on a single pump station, if we had 4 people on duty, we would only need 5 firefighters for the whole watch, and that would mean we would be sending people to other stations to cover sickness and getting in people on overtime, which would cost us more money in the long term, and we wouldn't be able to quantify those costs at this moment in time because by and large they're fairly unpredictable.
Pretty much referred to in 5.6 of the paper. Council on page 59 explains that around that ridership factor as well.
Any
yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to just make a comment. It's a tough decision and also it's a challenging time, and also as you give good research and you put a lot of hours to come up with this plan. But what I'm asking, is there another alternative ways maybe you can go back to look at, maybe to sorting out? I'm not saying you're going to have like a magic solution, but is there any other options maybe you can look at again? Thank you.
Yeah, I think through the course of the project, the research we've carried out, like I mentioned earlier, we've contacted the vast majority of fire and rescue services around the country and looked at their different models that they've implemented over the last 10 years. We then brought them back into service, analysed our local risk and put them through our software to match our resource to that risk. And we did look at the turntable ladder in central Bristol at Temple Fire Station, which is primary crewed at the moment, so there's permanently 2 people on that fire appliance. Our current risk model in central Bristol dictates that there would be a high risk if we removed crewing from that vehicle on a permanent basis and what we call switch crewers. So we've discounted and considered a number of different options, and these we feel best suit our resource to risk in Avon at this moment in time.
And orders to reaffirm, the options we put do not require the closure of any stations and do not require the removal of any fire appliances. So we still maintain the same level of emergency response in terms of our assets.
Any?
Yeah, just a last bit. Is there any like pressure, or you put in like the extra staff, if this will be successful, this decision today, physically and mentally, in your staff members?
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear your question.
If this decision will be successful, is there any like a pressure or like morally, physically and mentally can impact your staff members?
As I said earlier, we'll make sure that we work with our colleagues in the Fire Brigades Union to ensure that these proposals are reinforced by proper safe systems of work as well, and around ensuring that we continue to match the resource to the risk to ensure that we protect our firefighters.
Any more questions or comments from anybody? No.
Questions or comments?
Either. I'll let you have either.
It's comment really. In honesty, I don't believe there's a single member sitting around this table who wants to receive this report today or to make a decision on it. As Ben said succinctly and passionately, we have great pride on what Avon's firefighters achieve, what this service delivers, and for our residents, we want to actually to minimise and safeguard them the most, of course. But equally, we can't play Pontius Pilate. We do have a statutory duty to ensure we maintain a balanced budget, and does very reluctantly seem to me, and I suspect the bulk of you, that the officer recommendation today is the least worst option. As Simon said, no fire station will be closed, no fire appliance taken off the road. So I'm not at all happy, but certainly we need to liaise closely with the firefighters unions and actually send back the information to our committees to see about the impact of this move, of course, and to safeguard it and properly identify its assessments. But reluctantly, I think I would be minded to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, and I think we all feel fairly similar about this. It's not something we would want to do, but we're having to do it, and we will make the best out of it that we possibly can. Do you, I was going to say, do you...
If there's no other questions from members, I'll just make a closing statement before you take the recommendations within the paper. So in May 2023, I initiated the formation of an efficiency project team tasked with addressing cost savings required for us to preserve a balanced budget while delivering on our commitments as a fire and rescue service. Such funding pressures became known following the confirmation of the Grey Book Pay Award and uncertain future funding settlements from central government for 24-25 onwards. To achieve a balanced budget, we must identify efficiency savings of nearly £2.5 million in the years ahead. The proposals today are founded upon significant research and data analysis, and we continue to evaluate the various options available to us while ensuring our resources and planning are aligned with the level of risk that we face. Whilst we must make savings, our resource allocation and crewing levels are guided by dedication to firefighter safety and the well-being of local residents. We will not be closing any of our existing fire stations, nor will we reduce the number of fire engines and appliances within our service. We are looking at how we can do things differently to ensure we meet efficiency savings required, reinvest in other areas and be more agile as a service to make our service stronger and our communities safer. In an ideal world, we would not have to make these difficult decisions, but unfortunately, the harsh reality is that we must take the funding we have and find innovative ways to utilise resources available to us. But these decisions are not ones that we ordinarily like to make, but we are forced to make. We will not compromise firefighter safety. We will work with trade unions to ensure we put the right processes and policies in place whilst finding these efficiency savings, and also for the safety of our communities in the pursuit of cost savings. Thank you.
Okay, so if I then recap what the recommendations are with the couple of amendments I outlined at the beginning, and then you can let me know as members whether you're happy to take them en bloc or whether you want to vote on them individually. So the Fire Authority is asked to A, approve the continued development and implementation of a crewing model that reflects 4 personnel and every pumping appliance at whole-time stations, crewing to be maintained on 5 at Hicksgate, where we have key point indicators for national resilience, but this is subject to any unforeseen risk to service delivery to the public, with progress on development and implementation to be reported to the next PRC meeting in December. Then the following recommendations, B, C and D, are as per your paper. So B is approve the ongoing research and development of a flexible crewing model for Yate, whole-time personnel, whilst ensuring 4 personnel in the whole-time appliance to maintain a day crewed model. C, approve the investment and introduction of an alarm response vehicle blended fleet to create capacity for whole-time crews to be more productive in protection and prevention activities. D, approve the research and potential implementation of a smaller response vehicle for lower category non-life critical incidents. This is a blended fleet option for a multi-pump station to be defined in due course by risk analysis and data. And then we've added E, to return the matter to the Policy and Resources Committee with a progress report on the implementation of these recommendations. And I would assure you that at that point, if there were any unforeseen risks, the implementation would be paused and it would come back to PRC. Sorry, Steve.
Just on that subject to unforeseen risks bit,
Yes.
could we add to that?
Yes.
Subject to, what the right words are, but subject to unforeseen changes to next year's budget.
Okay.
What I would like is if it turns out that next year's budget isn't as bad as we think it might be, I'd like the opportunity to come back to this and review it.
Okay.
So this is a contingency plan in place. If it's what we think it's going to be, we know where we're going. But if it's not, let's have another look.
Is there a sort of...
Chair, can we just be very careful of that? Because it could actually fact work the other way. If the budget got worse, then,
it could,
you've left...
If the budget's worse, we're going to have to do something, aren't we?
Okay. Then?
I just say, with the words that we've added in the safeguards, actually, I think this is the best situation that we could possibly end up with. It gives us enough wiggle room to be able to look at the circumstances as they are at the time, when we have better knowledge, than it is to try and make a decision now and force it, forcibly make it to work. So I think that's probably the best situation that we can possibly be in, adding those safeguards.
David, you had your hand up?
One point of clarification is what's the last possible time we can actually make this decision before it starts eating into budgets?
You will be making a decision now, so particularly for B, C and D, which are, there's enough data to make that implementation. It was for A that the decision is subject to whether any unforeseen risks become apparent as I think there's trials and other data which is going to be collected. So you are making the decision today because of the need to plan ahead for the budget. I think that's right. My colleagues will help me.
That's right. We'll have an identification of what the idea of what our next year's budget is around about December. Normally a week before Christmas, I think, Claire, isn't it? Yep, week before Christmas. But what we will go ahead now, subject to approval of the recommendations, is that working with the trade unions and our workforce around how this might look for implementation, so that if the budget becomes a different picture in December, it's unlikely by that time any of these will be implemented anyway.
I've got David and then Richard have both.
Can I make a proposal then that we have a separate vote for point A and then encompass all the others together? How do people feel about that?
And can I be clear, with the subject 2, which I've added to the end of A, which currently says subject to any unforeseen risk to service delivery to the public, do we want, and subject to any changes in funding position?
I think so, yes.
Richard?
Thank you, Chair. It was similar lines to David's thinking, really. I was wondering what the feasibility is of us basically bringing this back in at the next meeting, subject to ongoing discussions with the FBU. I was very moved by their statement today. I wondered if that would be a genuine possibility.
I think it would be appropriate to have an update at the next meeting.
So the wording of the subject to, if I can put it that way, the risk to service delivery to the public, and now we've added subject to changes in funding position, seeks to address the concerns that the FBU have raised about safety and impact on the public. So I was hoping we'd encompass that, and that will obviously be reported to the next Policy and Resources Committee. But I'm open to any suggestions about wording that members want to suggest. So, sorry, Liz?
We've put public in there, but I think there's also the risk to our fire crew as well, and that, I don't know if that's sort of incumbent in that. Yeah.
Yeah, happy with that?
So what I've got, let me just be clear. So I've put at the end, so subject to any unforeseen risk to service delivery to the public and firefighters, and subject to any change in the funding position, with progress on the development and implementation to be reported to the Policy and Resources Committee. Yeah? We got there. Super. Please don't make me say that again. So would we like to now vote? Are people more comfortable? Do you want to vote on everything or still do A separately? A separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just make a point? It seems like A is something that we're going to actually factor in now, whereas B, C and D are sort of things that have been going on already. So maybe if we just have a separate vote, then that just clarifies the position. Yeah. And obviously we have amended A, so, you know, we can recognise the fact that we have amended A, take that as itself, and then do the rest on block.
Okay, all right. So let me read A just one last time, so we're all clear. So, and we're going to vote on A. Okay, so the Fire Authority is asked to approve the continued development and implementation of a crewing model that reflects full personnel and every pumping appliance at whole-time stations. Crewing will be maintained on 5 at Hicksgate, where we have key point indicators for national resilience, subject to unforeseen risk to service delivery to the public or firefighters, and subject to changes in funding position, with progress to be on development and implementation to be reported back to the next PLC in December. Okay, so do we want to take any votes against?
Yeah. So first of all,
are you going to propose? Sorry,
I'll propose it. Okay. Yes. Do you want to second it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. So the way we normally vote is to ask for those against. Please raise your hand. So that's
2 against.
2. Those abstaining? No.
1 abstaining.
1, right. And those in favour?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And then we'll move on to recommendations B, C, D, and a new E, which is to return to the Policy and Resources Committee a report on the progress made on implementation, and that's to the PLC meeting in December. So can I have a proposer, please, for B, C, D, and E?
I'll propose it.
Brenda, thank you.
And Andrews.
David?
David, sorry, is going to
second. Thank you very much. Any votes against? None. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Votes for? Thank you. Super. Right, I need to go and lay down in a darkened room.
Thank you. I do appreciate how hard this is, and isn't necessarily somewhere we'd like to be, but we have to be pragmatic. And can I thank all the members of the FBU who've come along this afternoon. We appreciate your coming and also your input. And if you want to leave us to get on with the rest of the boring agenda, we've done the important bits, and we thank you very much for coming this afternoon. You're welcome to stay. Depends how bored you are, really.
They've heard it's my
no, you
papers.
can't go. So I'm insisting the councillors stay and the officers, so they don't have a get-out clause.
We've done like longer pieces. Come on, press. Come on.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you all for this afternoon, and hopefully, I'm saying, the next item, item 9, is not contentious. I'm leaving that to Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll try not to make it contentious. Okay. So I think most of you are expecting this paper. It has already been considered by the AJOC committee. So I'll go straight to the recommendations. So my recommendation is you adopt as Avon Fire Authority new Members Code of Conduct, the LGA Model Councillor Code of Conduct with one minor addition, which I'll go through in a moment, and that's at Appendix 1 of your paper. Sorry, I should have said my paper's at page 61 of the bundle. We're also asking you to adopt a separate document which is called Arrangements for Dealing with Complaints. So whereas our existing code encompasses everything, the new LGA code doesn't, so you have to have a separate arrangements document. That's at Appendix 2, and it has 2 annexes. One is a complaint form for members to complete, and one is a procedure for any hearings of an AJOC subcommittee. And then C is just simply to note that we have, and I know this is a bit cheeky, but I've anticipated no problems with this paper. So I have provisionally booked some training for you on the new Code of Conduct. And the reason I've done that is Baines very kindly offered to share that training and share the cost with me. So I thought it would be rude not to, okay? So I have arranged training for 3 dates. Monday the 30th of October in person, Friday the 10th of November in person, and Wednesday the 15th of November online. They're all at different times, so you'll notice they're different days, different times, 2 in person, 1 online. That should ensure we capture everyone. And please, please don't think you've got to go to more than one event. You only have to go to one, but I've just laid on 3, so you've got a nice choice, okay? So, quickly, by way of background, we had the independent governance review, so this is 3.1, and that was on the 25th of April. You've already accepted all 12 recommendations, which included recommendation 8, which was to adopt the new LGA model councillor code of conduct. I have been in touch with your unitary authorities. 3 of them have already done so. So the only council that hasn't is Bristol, and they tell me that once they revert to the old committee structure. I'm sure someone will tell me if this is... new committee structure. Okay. So when they go to that model rather than a mayor model, they are intending to do this as well. So we're in good company. Okay. Under the terms of reference, this proposal had to go to AJOC first, so I presented this paper to AJOC quite recently on the 20th of September, and they were happy to recommend its adoption to you. So I wasn't going to go through the details, save to draw your attention to paragraph 5.4, which is on page 63 of your bundle. And what I explained there is the one amendment that I've made to the code. So both Baines and South Gloucestershire made this amendment as well. And it was just, asking members to, or requiring that members take into account the advice provided to them about code of conduct matters by myself, the monitoring officer, and also the statutory finance officer. They call them a chief finance officer. We discussed this at members' briefing, and we discussed other amendments that have been made that we decided weren't necessary, and we thought actually that's quite sensible. And all it says is you listen to the advice. It's under the heading consideration of advice, and if you don't like the advice, you just explain why. So you don't have to follow the advice, you just have to explain why. So that's at page 73 of your bundle. So if you go to page 73 in the appendix, you'll see that new section at the top of the page, 8B, consideration of advice. Okay, so that's the only amendment I've made which is out with the LGA version, and the LGA very much says this is a template for you to amend as you so wish. Okay. Appendix 2 is the arrangements for complaints, so I have to deal with those alongside the independent person. We do have an independent person, and there's a nice clear complaint form now, so hopefully, touch wood, we won't receive any of these, but if we do, it should be much clearer than it was previously. They were just email and there wasn't a form for them to complete, and I think this will be clearer. So I'm not intending to spend any more time on this because I think you've all had quite a day already, but if you could ask me any questions, and then we'll go to the vote.
Any questions from anybody?
No? Go there.
No questions, just a comment. Just thanks for all the work you put into this, Amanda. I know it's taken longer than it probably should have done, but you know we've got there. So
thank you, much appreciated. So we're happy to vote on the recommendations collectively. So A is adopt the code, B is adopt the arrangements, and C is to note the training. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes in favour? Wonderful. Thank you very much. So the next paper is also mine, and this is your last paper, you'll be pleased to hear. So this is a paper about the extension of the independent person appointment. So it is linked to the last one because for code of conduct matters we need an independent person. So the recommendation is that I'm asking you to extend the term of the current independent person by 3 years until 31st of December 2026. This sounds like a long time, but let me tell you, the first 3 years have gone by very, very quickly. So I'll just explain that when I arrived 3 years ago, I think we didn't have an independent person for a while. And we put out a number of recruitment rounds and not got anywhere. It's not a job that people seem to be keen to do. We did eventually run interviews, and we appointed James Mason on the 1st of January 2021 for a period of 3 years. In terms of financial implications, he receives a very modest allowance, so it's paid in a retainer style. So he gets £1,000 a year, which is paid half yearly. And that means he's available to answer the phone at any time I ring him about a code of conduct matter. Now, touch wood, I haven't had to consult with him, so what he's done for that is he's monitored your meetings, he comes to the odd meeting when he can, he's a professional, and he also goes to training about being an independent person, so his fee has been used in that way. Under the Localism Act 2011, we have to appoint at least one independent person. The gold standard is you have two. So you have one that helps me make decisions and one that helps the member that's being complained about. But we've never managed to get to two because of the difficulties with recruitment. So we have a sort of relaxed arrangement with the UAs that we can share independent persons if we need to, if we need that additional person, okay? I have checked the Act, the Localism Act, to see if there's anything about maximum terms of tenure, and there is nothing in the Act. It's very unhelpful. So I have consulted with the LGA on your behalf, and they said there's no official best practice. It varies dramatically from one local authority to another. Some appoint for up to 8-10 years, so it's very, very sort of variable. And I said, look, we're intending to propose that we extend by one more term, particularly as the chap hasn't been used yet, and we're hoping that will remain to be the case, but they've said, yes, absolutely, that sounds sensible. So I have checked with you that I'm not proposing anything that is against best practice. He has kindly, I begged, confirmed that he would be willing to extend his tenure. So if you're willing to agree to the resolution, then he would just be in post for another 3 years. So I wasn't going to deal with anything else. Councillor Barney.
Yeah, very quickly, Amanda, thanks very much. Is there any possibility, any scope for sharing an independent person with another fire authority, or will we be below what we are required to do if that's the case? I'm just thinking, because we haven't used this person, hopefully we never will need to use this person, perhaps we could save a bit of money by sharing him around.
Well, I think we can...
We won't minute that remark.
So I think the problem is the Localism Act applies to every UA, and we are an authority in our own right, and the wording is at least one. So I can't get away with that statutory requirement. However, I can choose not to try and appoint another and share an additional resource if needed. And I know some independent persons are much busier than others, so some get used a lot, in which case you probably want to share the work around, but we're very lucky we haven't been in that situation. So it is the minimum, unfortunately,
Shame.
but it is a relatively cheap thing to have, and it could end up being used a lot if it all, if things went that way, but let's hope it doesn't.
Also, will James need to do the LGA training that's coming up?
Yeah, it's normally other organisations that provide it, but yes, he has already done training. I think he did the first year, and I'm not sure if he did last year simply because he felt, well, I've still got my training materials from last time. There haven't been any issues that have arisen. But yes, we will send him on some more training just to make sure he's up to date. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm asking that you extend the term of the current independent person by 3 years until 31st December 2026. Can I have a proposer? Brenda, and a seconder? Robert, thank you. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes in favour? Super, thank you.
Great. Well, because we agreed that it's the confidential minutes earlier, we don't need to go through that and exclude the press and the public, etc. So, this was our last item for today. The date of our next meeting is Friday the 16th of February 2024 at 10:30, and the venue will be here. So, just in case I don't see you all again before Christmas, I'm going to say Happy Christmas. How's that? I can be the first one this year. So, there you go.
That doesn't mean you can't not attend committee meetings in December. Okay.
That's right. So thank you all for coming today. I know it's been a bit difficult, but I think we did as best we could given the circumstances. So thank you all very much for coming.